Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. Hi, if you're watching us online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. My name's Martin O'Leary. I'm the head of studio here. I'm a white man in my 40s, long hair and a beard, wearing a quite pink hoodie today, which I bought because I was in Uniqlo in Tokyo, and it was the only coloured garment in the entire shop. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in the space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So an especially big welcome to anyone who's new to the studio. Can anyone who's new to the studio put your hand up? A few of you today. Hello, welcome. This bit is for you. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, where we are right now, UE Bristol and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. What we do is we offer studio space, including desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And most of all, we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make some time for collaboration. So just a few notes before we begin. Please do feel free to move around. We've got a kitchen back there. You can grab a cup of tea or coffee or a glass of water. We have a quiet space just next to this space. So to my left, your right, just around the corner there, there's a little room. If you want to take a break at any point, you can pop in there. There's some beanbags and sofas and things, and it's reasonably well soundproofed. We're not expecting a fire drill today, so if you hear a fire alarm, that's probably real. The fire exits are at the other end of the studio, so again, my left, your right, on either side, but should we need them, the studio team will direct you to them. And then there are accessible toilets, including baby change, over there in the corridor just next to the kitchen. There'll be a Q&A at the end of this talk, so those of you who are watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Lauatam is here, he will be your voice in the room today. If you're in the building, please raise your hand and we'll send around a microphone so the folks at home can hear what you're saying. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, at pmstudiouk.bsky.social on Blue Sky, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. So today's talk is part of Home, which is a year of making, experiencing, and sharing ideas of home. Throughout 2025, Watershed is hosting a program of films, immersive art, talks and workshops that will explore the many different ways in which people find, make, imagine, long for and escape home. You can find out more about the whole program at watershed.co.uk/home. All right, our speaker for today is Mandy Rose. Mandy is Professor of Documentary and Digital Cultures at UE Bristol and a co-investigator of the UKRI My World programme, as well as a very long-time studio resident. But before all that, she spent 20 years at the BBC, where, among many other things, she was the co-producer of the Video Nation project, where between 1994 and 2000, hundreds of people across the UK recorded aspects of everyday life, which were broadcast on BBC Two Monday to Friday, just before Newsnight. Today, she's going to revisit that project and present a variety of responses to it. 30 years on, with television transformed and first-person video ubiquitous, how do these recordings resonate with us now? And how might Video Nation be a resource for thinking about media and community today? So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Mandy.
So thanks, Martin, and thanks, Studio, for the invitation. I realise I haven't thought through audio description of my slides, but I am a white woman in her late 60s with greying brown hair and a leafy blouse on. I'm going to show a number of videos, and each one, the voice on each one is the person who recorded that video. On my screen right now, I have 4 faces of people who took part in the Video Nation project, peering into their cameras at us. So on the 7th of March, 1994, the following brief programme was transmitted on BBC Two just before Newsnight.
M-I-R-R-O-R, mirror. There was a time when I found they were very useful. They still are, of course, I have to use them. But it's a ghastly thing to look and see one's face, what it is now, and what you feel it should be inside you. One doesn't feel old, you know. You get, I don't know what the age is, somewhere about 30 to 40, and from then on, inside, you don't get any older. But every time you look in that confounded mirror and see what time has done and age has done to your features, your body, your hands, everything, that's what I dislike more than anything.
That resonated with me back then in '94. It resonates a whole lot more today, I can tell you. So Mirror was the first of over 1,200 shorts transmitted between '94 and 2001 in that slot. Output from the Video Nation project that I co-produced, as Martin said, with Chris Moore. The shorts weren't the only output from Video Nation and weren't envisaged when the project was started, but they became the best-known output, and they made the series a household name. Video Nation emerged. Oh, sorry. No. Go back. Sorry. Why am I not seeing this short? There you are. Video Nation emerged within the first wave of the digital transformation that brought media tools and platforms to people, made media sharing widely available. The project took advantage of a recent technology, the handheld camcorder. 10 years before YouTube, Video Nation shorts prefigured the brief recordings of the self that are the core content of social media. Yet while the shorts have much in common with the first-person videos that characterize YouTube, or perhaps even more TikTok now, what was fundamentally different was their place in the media ecology and their reach to audiences. Mediated and curated by a production team and transmitted on BBC Two 5 nights a week, the shorts brought about a unique phenomenon in which a viewing public, often over 1 million people, gave 2 minutes to witness some aspect of the life of one fellow citizen, as seen through their eyes and recorded by them. So in this talk, I'm going to offer some context about how Video Nation was developed and how the project worked. I'll show some shorts. I'll offer some headlines on how these programs were received. I've been invited to give this talk within the context of the home season that Watershed's running. That's fitting. Video Nation recordings reflect the domestic space of the home, generally. They entered the public domain through TV, and they were consumed within the private space of the living room. That was the dynamic at the heart of the project. Thinking back on Video Nation, I think home is a key theme metaphorically too, in the sense that home also speaks to the wider world we share, the country or nation. And I'm going to suggest that this idea of home gives Video Nation continuing relevance. As a project recorded by the public, Video Nation output is woefully inaccessible. These images, this one for example, these images are from the Video Nation website, which you can still find on the BBC, but hundreds of shorts used to be available through the website, which was set up after the TV project was finished, until Real Player was decommissioned. There were, as it says, not here, but here, 227 videos on the theme of home. So the BFI is the provider of public access to BBC content, but they haven't included the shorts in their database collection. You can find one if you know the date it went out, but how would you know that? So, and the BBC's commercial programme archive is not open to the public. So I see this talk as an opportunity to share some of the shorts that I have access to and provide some context on the project for what these might contribute to a conversation about media, community and belonging today. So Video Nation was developed within the BBC's Community Programmes unit, its Access TV arm, which was always a small operation, in response to the Video Diaries series that had launched on BBC Two in 1990. Diaries put camcorders into the hands of members of the public for the first time, and each 50-minute programme reflected one individual's experience during a period of change or challenge. The diarist was part of the editing process, and while their programmes were still mediated by TV producers and BBC editorial guidelines, These programmes did bring unseen perspectives and themes to TV with a directness and an intimacy that felt totally fresh. Early programmes included a woman going back to the States to confront the sexual abuse she'd suffered as a child. Another took the perspective of an England football supporter at the World Cup in Italy at a time when English supporters were demonised, at least they felt, in 1990. So Video Nation was conceptualised by Tony Steiger, a producer in the CPU, as a fusion between video diaries and a much earlier British cultural project, Mass Observation. In the 1930s, Mass Observation recruited a national panel of volunteers, the Mass Observers, who were invited to write diaries about their own lives. This pioneering initiative resulted in a unique archive of everyday life that continues to this day. I could talk about Mass Observation for an hour, but I would say if you don't know about that project, really take a look at it. It's such an interesting project and important. So based on this idea of fusing the self-anthropology of mass observation with the affordances of the camcorder, Video Nation was given the green light in '92 by then BBC Two channel controller Alan Yentob on the basis of the concept rather than specific programme proposals. And that was critical to Video Nation, that he kind of took a leap of faith in a way about this idea of recruiting a broad cross-section of people across Britain, giving them camcorders and training, and allowing that programme ideas would be generated in response to what they recorded. I was working at the time as a producer-director on BBC Two's arts programme, The Late Show, when I saw that the Community Programmes Unit was looking for producers for a new project. Seeing Mass Observation referenced grabbed my attention. That signalled a number of things that interested me. An ethical proposition that people would be the instigators and subjects of their own recordings rather than the objects of a director's gaze, with the potential to reveal aspects of life that were overlooked on TV then. And an attitude to the everyday. Mass Observation owed as much to surrealism as to social science. The first-person account that emerged from Mass Observation diaries foregrounded culture, pleasure, spare time, inner life. So I joined the community programmes as a producer alongside Chris Moore, whose background was in radio and local TV. In the first months, we visited Mass Observation. We found out about the way that they'd engaged with the diarists back then and in the continuing project. And we drew on their methods, particularly the briefings they used as frameworks to solicit contributions. So looking for our group of people, we appealed on TV and on radio for contributors. There was a promo on BBC One. It's hard to imagine. Over 3,000 people applied. So we had this kind of interesting problem, how to make a selection. We did a lot of thinking about this in the early days, wondered, among other things, if there might be a case for an entirely random selection process. But that didn't feel right. The project's very title and the context of the BBC meant that the group we gave camcorders to would constitute a form of statement about the UK at that moment. We needed to take responsibility for that composition. After a lot of thinking, we settled on a formula. The group would manifest some key demographics that TV didn't generally reflect, mirroring how the population is spread across the UK. The group would be around 50-50 men and women, would reflect the age of the population so that 20% of people taking part would be over 60. Meanwhile, the group would, broadly speaking, reflect the income of people in Britain at the time, so that 10 of the 50 people would be living on an income of, and I can't remember what it was, but let's say less than 12,000. At the same time, we soon concluded that it was neither possible nor desirable to try and represent the UK in any social scientific way in a group of 50, which is the number we'd settled on. Instead, we set about recruiting a geographically and socially diverse group that foregrounded multiculturalism and other factors, disability, for instance, that were underrepresented elsewhere on TV. In terms of what we said about the project, we described the group as reflecting the diversity of the UK. The first group of 56 people, we couldn't get it down to 50, was made up of 43 people in England, they're not necessarily born there, 7 in Scotland, 3 in Wales, 3 in Northern Ireland, Participants included a Jamaican-born pensioner in West London, an ME sufferer, a soldier, a young woman working in her parents' Chinese takeaway, a house husband, a vicar, a single mother, a nun, a refugee, a New Age traveller, a Conservative peer who we later learnt had been imprisoned in the 1950s for homosexual activity, a merchant banker. 10 of the original participants were from ethnic minorities, 30 were women, and 11 were over 60 years old. The youngest was a 12-year-old girl from a mining family in Doncaster. The oldest was Colonel Gordon Hencher, then 73. We brought the participants together in training weekends. We gave them exercises so they got used to recording, talking to camera when it was on a tripod, for instance. Things that have become an everyday grammar of vernacular video, which were new then. As important as the technical considerations, the training was about encouraging people to articulate their values, their concerns, to say things aloud that they might usually take for granted. And we encouraged them not just to talk to the camera, but to turn the camera on to capture significant events as they were unfolding. On video diaries, the participants attended as much as the editors they could. We didn't see how that could work on Video Nation, with contributors spread around the country. Instead, we gave participants a right of veto over what they recorded. The commitment was that nothing would ever be transmitted before being seen and approved in its edited version, and we positively encouraged people to use that veto if they had any reservations at all. Participants went home with their cameras and tapes arrived in the post. I still remember watching that first tape of Gordon Hencher's and being taken aback. If I'd been making a programme about ageing, I knew I wouldn't have turned to Gordon. If I had approached him, I suspect he would have brushed me off, played down or denied the strength of his feelings on the subject of ageing. But with the camera in his own hands and in his control, he'd chosen this profound and universal theme, and to share his vulnerability. It was clear that even then that this method had potential for new perspectives on the everyday. At first, we didn't know what to do with these brief but arresting moments that would grab our attention as we watched the recordings. But when we pitched proposals for Video Nation's launch, we included the idea of shorts. And those became our central proposition. Our annual output between 1994 and 2001 was 5 shorts a week for 40 weeks of the year, plus at least 3 hours of longer format programmes. So here are another 2 pieces.
This week, Roger's on nights because we're going away on February the 8th for a 25th wedding anniversary. If he does nights, he earns a lot more than he would on normal days, which gives us 4 weeks' money, to play around with. Otherwise, we won't be able to go. And the 4 weeks that he is away, working, I have Sally sleeping with me. I don't know whether she really likes doing it or not, but it gives me a chance to give her a cuddle. Not very often she has a cuddle now, she's too old. I can't sleep on my own because I never had to, never slept on my own in my life. We're being 10 of us and having the 6 girls. Night, Sally. Being the 6 girls, there was 3 at the top and 3 at the bottom of the bed. I've never slept in a bed of my own anyway. We usually come to bed about 9:30 when Roger goes to work, have a bath and then get into bed, and I usually lay and do the crossword or read my book. Like I say, Sally gets into bed and she's gone. Quite good company actually. You get the odd grunt now and again, snoring, but I do enjoy having her in the bed. Now there's a good clue. 1 across, home movie device, 5 and 6. Wonder if that's video camera.
Can this one be the same one again?
We've just been out tonight and I almost got a racist attack on me. It was really scary. And he just followed me everywhere, this guy. He's throwing chips at me and everything. He was starting a proper race fight. I could see it coming. But then some other people came along and it was stopped. But I thought I left all this kind of stuff back, left it in Blackburn. Because last year at university, nothing like this happened. But once I'm in Leamington, it happens a lot. And it's just so scary going into a town and you're getting racist fights. That's why I really want to go to this BNP march next Saturday. I mean, I hate walking downtown on my own now, because I know I'm going to get these racist attacks, and it's just so scary. I mean, you get this paranoid delusion of all white people that you think, oh no, he's going to do something on me, and it's not fair. I mean, I hate black people just going up to white people and having racist attacks on them. It's not fair on anybody. That's not how society is supposed to progress. We're supposed to be called a civilized society, and you go up to people of a different colour and hit them for just being a different colour. Why? I mean, I just sit there wondering, why? It's not fair. I know it's really stupid saying it's not fair, and it's getting to me though.
So, in fact, that piece showed in the first 2 weeks. Viewers didn't take to the shorts at first. The BBC duty log reflected confusion and irritation with the form and content. A piece in which a young man gave viewers a guided tour of the mildewy bathroom and blocked shower in his rented flat provoked 6 calls. Was it supposed to be real? It was not clear whether the man featured was an actor or not. What is the point of this programme, someone asked. Another said that they found these programmes crass, childish, depressing, and that they achieved nothing. After a bawdy short that we scheduled on a Friday night, in which 3 young women examined a new innovation, the female condom, someone wrote to us, "Dear Sir, please explain what was happening on BBC Two at 10:30 tonight between Have I Got News for You and Newsnight. What was the point? Am I right in thinking that the attitude behind this TV interlude is that anything goes?" In a way, he was right. While the BBC had in the past had this notion of addressing the nation as a whole, the commissioning of Video Nation was a response to the increasingly diverse nature of British society. The notion of consensus among the general public, arguable anyway, had by the early 90s clearly become an anachronism. The BBC needed to find new ways to reflect the divergent views, experiences and lifestyles in the UK. Video Nation was one way to do that. Regrettably, Yes. As audiences became familiar with the shorts, complaints about the form stopped. Regrettably, there was never an in-depth study of what audiences made of Video Nation shorts. But what BBC audience data told us was that while people didn't turn on in order to see the shorts, the majority of people watching the previous programme would stay to watch, even if they then turned off the TV before Newsnight. So occasionally, when a football match was on before 10:28, they reached over 5 million people. It seemed that viewers accepted that these brief programmes constituted a polyphony of perspectives on life in the UK, that sometimes they might recognise something of themselves and sometimes not. Rather than just points of view, the shorts reflected forms of situated knowledge. They reveal how those lives are inflected by personal history, class, income, gender, generation, race, and racism. The shorts intervened in the flow of the evening's broadcast, injecting a moment of focus on the lived experience of one single person among the 60 million or so population before the official version of the nightly news that was Newsnight began. So I'll just say a few words on editorial control. It's important to underline that this was a co-creative process. At least that's how I really saw it. A collaboration between the participants and the BBC team. We would edit a short, send it out and phone the participant to see what they thought. People were keen to see their material on air, and mostly they said yes. When there was an issue of concern, these tended to be quite personal reasons, somebody being uncomfortable with how they looked in a certain shot, things that were easy to resolve. Occasionally it was something more weighty. A participant in Northern Ireland said no to a piece in which he was defacing some fascist graffiti. He feared reprisals. We didn't show it, obviously. After a while, it became clear that the right of veto was not inhibiting the project, which was what the BBC lawyers had originally worried about, but enabling it. People were filming freely, knowing that they could decide later if they felt comfortable about particular footage being on TV. Sometimes shorts did have implications neither us or participants anticipated. An elderly couple who took part lost the important support of a neighbour who used to shop for them after a short in which it was clear they were gay. Apparently she knew that, but she didn't feel comfortable with them being public about it. I don't know if they regretted that short. We were the BBC producers. It would be naive to think there was no power dynamic and that people were totally frank with us. But Ray and his partner, who, forgive me, I can't remember his name, didn't leave the project, which to us was the chief indicator of whether people were happy with taking part. I'll show two more pieces. I don't know why all these shorts are doubled up. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I won't worry about that. I'll just play a piece.
It's 39 weeks and I'm getting a bit tired of waiting. I am worried and frightened and nervous about the birth, but you know, in another way I want it to all get started so we can get on with the job of... I just want to see what it looks like, you know, and everything. It's just... I worry when the baby moves and I worry when the baby doesn't move. I can't stop doing this, you know, and I can't stop touching it, wiggling it around, cuddling it and things, you know, which my mum says, you know, I do too much. You're going to spoil the baby, as it were. Because, you know, I tend to communicate with, you know, I lift up my skin, see, look, like that, you know, I tend to, all right, talk, you know, I talk to the baby and I play with it and I cuddle it and things, and she says, you know, it's going to grow up as a huge, big baby before you've even given birth to it because you're just loving it so much. But I can't help it, I don't know, I've never loved in any part of my anatomy so much as, you know, this. And it's just amazing the reaction you get from it, you know, like now. Even now I can feel, you know, a foot hair and when it moves up here, and then, you know, when you think that this is the connection to its world, you know, that's what I do. I think, you know, Morse code, can you hear me kind of thing. I could just feel this little lump here now. It's probably a foot or a hand or something. And I try and feel the heartbeat to see if I can, you know, see if it's okay, and it's just me. I just love it. I can't help it. Can't help playing with the baby, as it were.
There were two shorts cut together, but there you are, just to reassure you. Yeah. Okay. So another one. Let me go forward. Very odd.
I can't stand politics. I'd like to just gloss over it, really. Just a bit of a pun there. Gloss over it. Oh, dear. I mean, we're a laughing stock. England's a laughing stock now, and so is he. So is the government. A few years ago, we were a feared country, a feared nation. Not no more. Everybody laughs at England now. I mean, Australia doesn't even want to know us. And their descendants are bleeding British. I'd like to see him stand up for us, Major, stand up for Great Britain and stand up for this country and have us like we used to be, a United Kingdom of England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales all together and say, right, bugger the rest of the world, sod the lot of you, I'm going to sort out the problems over here first. We don't look after our old people at all. We don't look after our handicapped people. We don't look after our sick people. But yet we send money to places like Bosnia so they can fight each other and kill kids and blow kids up. And that does make me wild. Look, for some people, this is what life is like all the time. Life is like that, but cold, grey and wet. That's what life is like for some people in this country, for a lot of people in this country.
Like many of them, it could have been recorded yesterday, but that's quite a long conversation to have about that. But yeah, which I can't have with you now, but we might pick it up in the conversation. So on our 5th anniversary on air, we got lots of coverage. TV critics were almost all positive about the shorts. Holly Toynbee puzzled over how she responded to the very diverse people in the shorts. How, quote, this great swathe of humanity leaves me with a feeling of warmth and empathy. Her explanation, that the series lets the camera climb inside people's skin to see the world through their eyes. Louise France in The Independent located their appeal in the element of surprise, intense, human, unpredictable. You wonder afterwards if you imagined it or not, yet every so often a character will stick in your mind for weeks. This quality of attention was very marked in the way people responded to shorts. Not knowing in advance who would be featured, what the theme or mood might be, but knowing that the time being asked of you was limited, seemed to foster a very unusual level of attentiveness, a careful consideration. Meanwhile, Video Nation was addressed by media scholars. Shortcomings were raised and discussed. It was argued that Video Nation amounted to an overly positive portrayal of UK life, that the focus on the private sphere underplayed the power dynamics in British society. Valid points with complicated answers. Nico Carpentier, now professor at Charles University, Prague, researched Video Nation for his PhD while the project was on air and went on to produce a major study of participatory media comparing projects across Europe. This came out in 2011. Examining how power and control were negotiated within Video Nation between the production team and participants, he concluded that the project constituted an enclave of maximalist participation within mainstream media. In Freak Show, his pioneering 2000 study of first-person media and factual television, our dear colleague and associate Jon Dovey considered that what the project brought to the TV space. He described Video Nation as the television experiment that offers a working model of both fragmentation and belonging in contemporary culture. It was that the project seemed to respond to at the time, and we were awarded by the Commission for Racial Equality their Race in the Media Award and the European Prix Iris. I went to Germany to collect the Prix Iris, which was a European Diversity Media Award, with Connie Mark, one of the participants whose life, personality and recordings made a big impact on me. Connie took part for the duration of the project and was on TV numerous times. She died a few years later. Here's one of the first shorts of hers that was broadcast.
I remember when I was a child, I had to do this in school. Poems about daffodil. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats an eye o'er hill and dale, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretch in never-ending line across the margin of the bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance. I think there was another one that said, fair daffodils, we weep to see you haste away so soon. As yet the early rising sun has not attained its noon. The amazing thing is I never ever saw a daffodil in Jamaica, but because our teachers are all British, we had to learn British poems and British history and British geography.
So, like many of the shorts, while short, it's kind of layered. It tells a story about colonialism, about the imposition of British culture on Caribbean education. At the same time, Connie's pleasure in the poetry is clear. Connie's appearances in shorts, including this one, reveal a multifaceted person, confounding any stereotype. She talked about how she identified with John Smith, the Labour leader, because of their shared Scottish heritage. She visits the grave of Mary Seacole, a nurse who became known as the Black Florence Nightingale for her work in the Crimean War, whose story Connie played a big part in bringing to public view. She records her morning fitness regime, exercising to Julio Iglesias, her favourite. She talks about her affection for Prince Charles and her dislike of Lady Di. I can't remember if it was that way round or the other way round, but anyway, so apologies, Connie, but if I've got that the wrong way round, I think it's right. She explains her fondness for the TV programme Neighbours, how the community of Ramsay Street reminds her of Port Royal in Jamaica, where she grew up. Which brings us back to the theme of home. In a project produced by the national broadcaster, framed by the title Video Nation, participants stood in for the national community, that home they shared with the audience. And I know those taking part understood their recordings as representing themselves to the nation. The political philosopher Hannah Arendt escaped Nazi Europe for the US, where she wrote The Origins of Totalitarianism in the immediate aftermath of World War II. Arising from that experience and that analysis, one of her central concerns was the question of how we sustain what she called the world held in common. This term, for her, refers to the public sphere of institutions, laws, art, but also to shared narratives that exist between people and across generations. This common world, this shared home, as I am thinking of it, Arendt saw as both gathering people together and separating them, providing an objective reality that grounds human interaction and political life. Without that connection and mutual recognition, Arendt had seen what could ensue. Today, as we all know, media is everywhere and attention is scarce. Shaped by algorithmic curation, social media is too often an echo chamber rather than an arena for meaningful and respectful dialogue and exchange. Meanwhile, forms of authoritarian populism are increasingly in evidence, with othering and scapegoating being wielded as political weapons. We urgently need to find new ways to foster a sense of a world held in common, not to deny contest and contention, but in spite of it. Thinking about the shorts, what stays with me in particular is the quality of attention that seemed to characterize their reception, that space in which audiences gave a moment, brief admittedly, to bear witness to a stranger's experience. How might a contemporary project reimagine that chance encounter that was the audience experience of the shorts? Might Video Nation have something to offer in thinking about that possibility today? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mandy.
Yes. So we're going to have a conversation now, aren't we?
Yes. Does anyone have a question for Mandy?
Hello, thank
Hi.
you. That was really cool. I'm curious about what it felt like at the time working on it and getting feedback from people that didn't get it, and then sort of getting mixed reviews and just this sort of whole vibe of making something that was quite progressive and different?
It was fantastic working on it. It was the highlight of my professional life. I mean, it was amazing, and it was so fabulous that, you know, what our daily working experience was sitting at our desks watching VHS tapes. And so, you know, there was a kind of remote connection with those people, and then the phone. But that sense that the tapes were like these gifts, you know, unfolding. Every day you had that feeling of not knowing what was going to come next, which is probably the feeling that the audience had too. They didn't know what was happening. So it was a huge pleasure, and I felt absolutely confident and clear during that time that there was something important in this, partly because of that way that we had been taken by surprise by what happened. You know, the feeling that, you know, in a way what I've been studying ever since is the relationship between technology, you know, technology and cultural form. And what was happening in Video Nation was, you know, that meeting of the camcorder, the space at home, and the proposition which did offer people a significant level of control. Yeah, and that, you know, that triangulation was producing something new and interesting. Yeah.
Any other questions? Rachel.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
They were amazing. I could watch those videos all day. I was wondering, in that bit, the initial phase where you said you got 3,000 applicants, did you ask people at the time, or can you remember, if you asked people why they applied?
I think that was on the application form, but beyond that, what I didn't get a chance to go into was the fact that we phoned a significant percentage of that 3,000 people, and then we visited a lot of people across the UK. And one of the things we did was, in that visit, we took the camcorder with us, and we would give the camcorder to the person or just set it up on the table and press record with their knowledge and leave the room and leave them to talk to the camera. And we would say, why do you want to do it? And what might we see if you have the camera? And there were a lot of things interesting about that, but one of them was that, you know, sometimes I'd go and visit somebody and I knew we were looking for, you know, let's say a professional in the southeast of England. Let's, you know, say, and I'd go and visit somebody and I'd engage with them and I'd think, oh yeah, they're great. This is, you know, this is good. They'll work. And then sometimes when I got back, I'd get back to the office and I'd show those tapes to people, the tapes we'd recorded with them. And it was just very interesting seeing people's reactions. Sometimes people would really engage with somebody who I hadn't engaged with necessarily in person at the time. And then other times, and other people who you'd think, oh yeah, this is an obvious person, you know, people would just not be terribly interested in. So, you know, I guess this is something about screen presence, something about people, you know, the way you respond to an unfolding on screen and what draws your attention and what doesn't. But yeah, that was interesting for me. That was a kind of learning.
Thanks.
Sorry, I think we'll be
Thank you. I was wondering if you gave them any sort of direction or steer in terms of how to film themselves. Like, did you, you know, to use kind of documentary parlance, like say, can you get us some B-roll or do these cutaways, make sure you cover these angles, or did you literally just leave them and try not to give them any steer?
No, that would be, you know, we did. We absolutely, at those training weekends, we were absolutely sharing a grammar, some approaches to recording, partly drawn from the experience of video diaries. But we would definitely, I never used the word B-roll, but we would definitely talk about cutaways. When you saw that piece with Liz Fear and her daughter in the bed, it was so sweet. She'd obviously got out of the bed and done the cutaway of the daughter. And actually that was like, those shots were important and giving you, but we talked about them, about things like giving the viewer a bit more information. You know, if you're in your house, it might be nice for them to see a view through the window, to understand where you live, you know, make sure you get on close on things. So yeah, we were definitely using a very conventional notion of filming, yeah? But what I just found so interesting was the people who broke through that. I mean, Jean Lee's piece with the camera on her stomach, I just still find astonishing, you know? I recently saw an exhibition where and I saw that Mary Kelly, the artist Mary Kelly, a feminist artist devoting her time to the visual language of a woman's life, had made a similar shot in sort of 1975. Jean hadn't seen that. Jean was working in her parents' Chinese restaurant, but yet she had thought, I'm going to fill the frame with my belly. And my belly can be on BBC Two, yes, you know. So we offered a very conventional vocabulary, and people broke through it and did their own thing in some really interesting and important ways. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks.
Hi, yeah, it's really interesting, thank you. I was just wondering what sort of brought it to a close. Like, why did it stop, given the pervasiveness of this sort of format now and obviously the positive interest that you had from it?
I still am angry about that. A new BBC Two controller arrived in the post, somebody who I knew, God damn it, and decided there was no space on the channel for this work. But at the same time, I think it's important to say, in the kind of ecology of broadcasting, those moments between programmes were becoming like a kind of incredibly important property where you could guide people to the next programme, try and secure their attention. And so I think it was partly that you know, there's that kind of not invented here business, that actually she wanted to do new stuff. And I think it was partly that the kind of pressures on the schedule were changing. There was a third thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah, but the irony was, so they closed down the project. I was given some time to think about what might come next. And the irony was, this was 2001. I looked around, and what I discovered was short form video, right? Even in the narrowband context, people were beginning to put short form video online. So what was kind of ironic and hilarious was, you know, I was given a bit of time and money to do this research, and then I had to go back to the BBC Two controller and show her what I'd found. And unfortunately, my message was, short form video is the coming thing. And she, you know, which was a message that fell on entirely deaf ears. Yeah.
Do you think nowadays, with the contemporary form of it, people would be fake, like with Big Brother and watching people, you know, we're fascinated with being on camera. Do you think people might try to differentiate whether it's a genuine thing or whether people are wanting attention? Or
I find those questions always quite complicated ones. I do believe in the way we respond to people on screen, and the way we feel interested in them or not. And those questions, sometimes I think we make our own judgments about the truth claims or the truth. But you know, I mean, though I would say of those things I've just shown you, I'm sure Colonel Hencher rehearsed his piece, if not on camera, in his head. You know, I'm sure, you know, Liz Freer will have thought, this is a piece, my sleeping situation is something which will illuminate my life for viewers. People were making decisions about what they recorded, and they were happy to be seen. Although what was so interesting, I think, different from now is, when you talk to people after a short had gone out, what they would very often say was, I went down the high street the next day and people were high-fiving me and saying, good on you. You know, you showed the BBC audience, you know, what life is like in our place. So there was a particular thing about bringing certain kind of community to the screen. But those issues about fake and real, I kind of think of Video Nation within a kind of cinema verite frame, which is a kind of certain documentary tradition. And cinema, obviously, we know that what that means, verite means truth. But when Jean Rouch, who was the kind of father of cinema verite, who I interviewed once, he said this elsewhere, but I interviewed him once, and he said, cinema verite is not the film of truth, but it's the truth of film. And I think of Video Nation as it's the truth of that material that as you kind of find it, you know? What I haven't shown today, which I regret, is more pieces where you're seeing life unfolding. I've shown a number of pieces that are talking to camera. Some of those pieces, I just think, have a different kind of preciousness, where you see events unfolding, you're not quite sure what's going to happen next. But anyway, yeah.
Just going to go to online.
That's what Jean Rouch calls that the pro-filmic event, and it's a very precious aspect of documentary, that unfolding thing that grips you because of the uncertainty of what's next.
Cheers. Question from online. The ethics of consent seems crucial to the authenticity of the videos. Could you say more about your decisions around consent?
Yes. So, as I briefly said, we dug our heels in originally about consent being enshrined in the contract. Their right to consent to anything that was in its edited form was enshrined in the contract. So that was a beginning position. And then, as I say, we would send things to people and we would try and not just ask, are you okay with this, but try and hear if there was tentativeness in their voice, you know? And in a way, it worked out very well for the project that, you know, what I said, that idea that, you know, in fact, that right of veto made people freer in what they filmed, you know, because they had that confidence that they wouldn't see things they weren't expecting. And it worked for us. We didn't want people to leave the project. We wanted people to stay on. So, but I do think that, you know, to give informed consent is a complicated thing to a situation you don't know what's gonna be. So as I say, over time we learnt to err on the side of caution. You know, there's a lovely piece, I wish I could show you, about couples talking late at night, and they're quite drunk, but it's a very, very moving piece. They're talking about her smoking and him worrying about her dying, and it's very, very moving, and it's lovely. And I sent it to Lynn and her husband and called up, and Lynn said, oh, no, it's fine. And I was like, no, hang on, Lynn, take a moment here. She was, among other things, a stepmother with a stepchild, you know, her stepchild in the house, and the public, you know, take a pause, think it through, because, you know, you might get some backlash. Actually, she was fine with it in the end, and I never heard any problems. But as I say, all we had to go on was about people staying in the project. That was what we had to go on, which people, mostly with broadcast content, don't have to go on because they don't have an ongoing responsibility or relationship to people who take part. Yeah.
There is a second part to that question as well.
Yes.
How does the ethics of consent apply to creating the world in common?
Well, the ethics of consent always apply. I think ethics is something that is always an issue in media making. And I think insofar as we're thinking about that world in common, I think that actually is a really challenging thing. That if perhaps you are trying to create a situation where people are coming together across difference, across differing points of view, I think that would be fundamentally challenging. I guess how I think about these things is to do, in a way around this kind of, I referred to that idea, the way I think of this project as a co-creative project. That there's a kind of, the media makers are bringing their skills, the public are bringing their experiences and their situated kind of knowledge. I think in those kinds of projects, these issues have to be at the front. That's the main thing I would say. The ethical conversations have to be at the front. The clarity about what's going to happen has to be at the front. They're not things you can think about further down the line. And in a way, maybe that's also a hint about possibility. The idea that, having that open space where you say, what might be involved here? Who's going to gain? What will they gain? What are the dangers? Is a space that you might use to kind of create a sense of community, create a sense of shared aims and, commonality.
Hi, I'm a director and edit producer. I wondered how, in terms of the storytelling, did you always include everything that was submitted? And how did you, as it was evolving, when certain characters were coming stronger maybe, did you direct them and say, we want to hear more of this or more of that? Or was it complete, like a verite approach? Oh,
I'm so glad you asked that question, because what you should know is these are, 1/100th of the amount of material we received. sometimes a short would be drawn from 50 minutes of material or a whole tape of material. So that's really important to know. So we were in a very significant role in terms of selection. But as I say, we did kind of almost intentionally lean towards that, when it came to the shorts anyway, lean towards that. This has made me sit up and watch. This something somebody has said has made me sit up and watch. And frankly, that's my that's the curatorial position. It should make somebody else sit up and watch. But also, there was a kind of generally, I think, a kind of alignment with the shorts moments and where people felt they were saying something they really wanted to be heard. There's a kind of way that things intensify in the tapes when somebody has got to a point that they were working up towards or they really wanted to convey. So there's that. And there's something else. We also made all these longer programs. Yes, that's right. We made all these longer programs, which were just, over the years, in the end, we kind of, that's a very useless shot of all these other programs. We made programs about community, about money, about belief, about housework, about neighbourhood, about belief. What did I say? Tons of these programs. So we were always asking people for content on those themes. But the way the briefings worked, very deliberately, was that we would ask kinds of open questions that allowed anybody to come in with their stuff, So like anybody deals with money. So kind of open question like, how do you, show us a conversation about money in your house? Or, how do you decide on, tell us how you decide how you allocate what money you have? Questions like that. Yeah.
I actually had a follow-up on that. So you mentioned the consent, talked a lot about the consent of not wanting to show things that people didn't want to be shown.
Yes.
Did you ever have to deal with the issue where participants really wanted something to be shown that you didn't feel could go out?
It's a good question. And I am not sure that I remember such an incident, which may also be to do with the fact that people didn't feel they had that agency. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't remember that being an issue, but I also think there was a dynamic. We were the BBC people, and I wonder whether people. I mean, how it worked in the office was there were like a team of us, and we would each kind of take on looking after, working with, facilitating maybe 8 to 10 people. So there'd be a particular set of people you were kind of whose tapes you were watching and who you were having conversations with. And I don't think I remember that. But as I say, I think, there was a dynamic, and whether people felt they could say, I really want to, I think if somebody said, I really want to do something about X, I think we would generally say, go on, do it, But yeah, okay, yeah.
Any last questions from the audience? Joe, take us home.
Yeah, I think this relates to the conversation about the ethics of a world in common. I'm not sure. You said something in your talk early on about on the training weekends, one of the things you would talk to people about is how to, I'll try and remember what you said, but something about how you would enable people to articulate things they might take for granted. I'm just sort of really interested in that idea and wondered if you could say a little bit more about that.
Well, it's to do with people expressing the idea that they didn't see anything very interesting about their life, right? That everyone sits inside their life and in a way feels it's a bit typical or, or banal or mundane or what, So there's that sense of trying to encourage people to understand that we had, in recruiting 56 people, we were setting up this idea of a kaleidoscopic view of the UK. And so it was important that we, understood their life, as they as they experienced it, you know? So it was about trying to encourage people to kind of own that own experience, to kind of, you know, own it, say it aloud, think of themselves from the outside a little bit, see their own life, try and imagine their own life contrasted with another life, very different somewhere else. Yeah. Trying to think of examples about that, but and you do get people reflecting on their place in the public imagination. The single mother talking about how she felt about images of single mother, or not their single mother, I'm thinking a particular woman, Dawn, whose surname I can't remember, in Sheffield, talking about how she felt victimised by, you know, the kind of representation of single mothers at the time. And yeah, I'm not sure, yeah.
All right, I think we're up on 2 o'clock, so we'll say thank you again to Mandy.
Thank you.
All right, before you all go, please don't forget that today is First Friday, our monthly social event. So from 5 till 7 p.m. today, you can come along to the studio, grab a drink, and explore some of the work that our community is making. And before that, if you do want to stick around in Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, then please come find one of the studio team. Studio team, give us a wave. We're here. And we'll be happy to help. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you all for being here today. And we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.